So I'm going to go through my magazine and talk about how I did everything and why I did it. So first of all, I added in the base image into Photoshop, which was this one here, and it was already in black and white because I'd already done that. Because I found that if you add the image into Photoshop, make it black and white, and then do everything on top of it, it makes everything else that you put in black and white. And so I added the image in black and white already, if that makes sense. So the next thing I did was James or Freddy's eyes. Obviously you can see they are black. And I zoomed in as far as I could and coloured them in with the paintbrush tool in black on Photoshop. And after I put this on Facebook, people said that it wasn't very polished or professional, and so I redid that, and I'm much happier with it now. I think it looks much better. So the next thing to do was to add in the title of the magazine to the masthead area. The title is Fright, which is a connotation of scared. It's a synonym of scared and a connotation of it has connotations of horror. Sorry. And I chose to make it all orange to match with the flames at the bottom of the magazine. And also I thought it would make it stand out from other horror magazines, which tend to be black and red. A lot of horror related things tend to be black and red. And I instead chose to make everything black, grey and orange. I just think it looks a lot nicer, and I think that it really matches in with the flames at the bottom. And also orange has connotations of Halloween, obviously because of pumpkins, and so that was what I took into account as well. So because I wanted the image of James and Sophie to be in front of the title of the magazine, because that's a technique used often on magazines, the elite person will appear in front of the title. I found this quite difficult to do at first because obviously all of this area here, this black and grey area, is part of the image. And so if I made the image go in front of the title, all of this grey image, part of the image, would be in front of the title as well, if that makes sense. And so what I had to do was cut out James or Freddy and then import him back in and put just the image of him over the title. And then I had to just polish off all of the edges because it looked like it had been taken out and put back in again, which obviously I didn't want. And I think I was successful in doing this because I think it does look like it was originally there. So the title, I chose to do this in a kind of cheesy style horror font. As I said when I talked through my poster, I didn't want to use the kind of blood dripping fonts or bold, cheesy comic kind of fonts, because I thought they were more. I just thought they were cheesier and they related more to slasher films. And for my poster and for my trailer, I wanted a gothic font because my film is a possession film, not a slasher or a comedy horror. But for my magazine, because it is a horror magazine as a whole, I thought it would be good to have a horror style, even if it's cheesy, that kind of font. And so I went for a really bold one. And I find as well, if I was using a gothic font for the masthead, it wouldn't be as bold and clear on the page as this one was. And I really liked this one. This one was called Friday the 13th, and it is very similar to the ones used on the Friday the 13th posters and in that whole franchise. And so I used that one. And I added a shadow to it to make it pop. And then I added in all of my cover lines. So originally my idea when I sketched everything out was to have the fire at the bottom, which, by the way, I just googled fire with transparent background and then added that in. I wanted a transparent background for the fire because it would be very hard to cut it out. If it had a white background, it would be very hard to cut that out when putting it in. And so I wanted a transparent background. But anyway, my original sketches were, they had the fire at the bottom, and then the cover lines were on like burnt pieces of paper, which I had here, here, and like here and here, and then I had my cover lines on them. And I did this and I really didn't like it. I thought it didn't have the effect that I wanted it to. It didn't look as scary. It didn't look as bold and eye catching. So I chose to just use the cover lines to frame the image. And I used a very bold font which would pop out from the page. And I chose to do my cover lines about different horror films, not just my one, because obviously the whole magazine is not just going to be about my film. And so I did Ouija 2, and I put what's in store for the second instalment. Rings, F. Javier, I can't say his name, exclusive interview. Sophie Rose's hit news show / our review, and this is actually one of the people in my media group and my sister, and Sophie is here. She made a TV show, so I put that on there. And then I also incorporated my horror film, Is Melody the Scariest Film of the Year? And then I did the pull quote here in the same font as the cover lines, and I put James Sullivan, I loved being the villain. And I chose to use the orange, as I said before, I duplicate the font layer and then I put it behind so it makes it pop more. And I chose to do this in white and orange to match with the rest of the cover, and because I thought it had a good contrast, it was contrasting enough to make it pop. And with this one I chose to do black and orange. Again, I forgot to say I did Photoshop the image of the music box in, and I made sure I refined the image enough, blurred the edges and added a shadow to make it look like it was originally there. So next I added in the barcode at the bottom, which is essential for buying the actual magazine. And I added in a puff here which says the nation's favourite horror magazine, issue 23, £2.50. And I think by saying that it's the nation's favourite, it entices the reader to buy this magazine over the others. And I chose to do the puff in a royal blue because that is a contrasting colour to orange, and contrasting colours are often used on magazines or posters to attract attention. And then I did a banner at the top, which is 40 years on, is The Omen still the scariest film of all time? Our top 50 inside. And I thought that this would entice the reader because it's stating that it's going to mention 51 other horror films. And so for people who have their favourites, they want to see whether their favourites are on that list. And so that's why I did that. And as well with the puff, I kind of created that static image around the circle, just because it reminds me of films like The Ring or Poltergeist with the whole static thing, and so that's why I did that. So that's how I did my whole magazine cover and why I did everything.